Okay. All right. Hello, hello. I see we've got one person on stream right now. So tell you what, we're gonna get going in maybe 2 minutes. Uh, oh. All right. Hmm. All right. Can everyone hear me? All right. All right. All right. Can anyone hear me? See, we've got some people coming in, so just want to give them a minute to get in. It looks like you should be able to, but I'm not 100% sure. Hey, thank you, John. I appreciate it. All right. So, since you guys showed up on time and, since you can hear me, let's get going. All right. So, today we are talking about the go-to-market slide. And, I think that if you were to look up pretty much any, online best practice pitch deck slide set, the go-to-market's going to be one of them. And we're going to spend most of the time here talking about the specific things that make a federal go-to-market slide a little different than what I think is probably best practice for a traditional commercial go-to-market slide. But I just want to just kind of set a little bit of context about why this is different and how you should think about creating a holistic deck that addresses all of your investors' interests. So, number one, if you're a dual use company, so you have both a commercial strategy and a defense government strategy, by all means, I think you should just have two slides here. Just leave your commercial go-to-market slide the way it is. If you're whatever strategy you're using, there are a million great YouTube videos on how to build a commercial go-to-market strategy, how to show that in your deck. I personally am of the opinion that the federal version of go-to-market is so different and it's so structured and it has its own peculiarities that you should just have a second slide. Don't try to mix the two, especially because certain investors like us, we specifically like companies that have federal exposure. So we're going to look at we want to see your go-to-market for federal, and we're going to evaluate, we're going to think about okay, does this meet our expectations? Do we think that this is a good go-to-market, a viable strategy? And then secondly, we also still want to see your commercial strategy. And then of course, if you're, pitching an investor that just does commercial, maybe you take out the federal go-to-market, or maybe you leave it in, really up to you. But that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Is just what does good look like here? How do you get there? So I'm going to go ahead and just share a draft go-to-market slide that I put together. Not to say that this is best, just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a preview. Oh, sorry. What the heck? Sorry, it's for some reason this is PowerPoint's giving me a hard time here. Sorry, not. So I've got my slides up in two different places. So I'm wondering if that's creating a little bit of static here. Okay, sorry about that. So here's a go-to-market slide. And this is not to say this is exactly what you'd want. Obviously, I did this kind of in drawings just to show you a little bit more of just to make it very clear that this is not the exact structure. But I think it probably would look a little something like that. It's going to say go-to-market. We're going to say in this hypothetical, we've got two go-to-market strategies that this company is going to use. One of them is competing for government contracts. That's our first strategy. Second strategy is proactive government outreach. And we're going to talk about what those are, but how to actually do that, whether they're right for you. But I think we're going to end up with something kind of in this ballpark. And I just want to spend a minute to say, why is the go-to-market slide so important? And the reason why is that this is the slide where everything becomes real, right? Because in the rest of your deck, you're painting this like utopian picture of what the world could be. It's like you're $1 billion mega success. You're absolutely knocking it out of the park. The investors are going to get a 50x return on their invested capital. You're talking about the problems. You're talking about your customers. You're talking about all of these great things. But then you have to speak about, well, how are you actually going to do that? And your solution slides are going to talk about how you're actually going to do that from a technological development standpoint. It's like, here's how I'm going to build this great tool that is going to, delight customers. The go-to-market is sort of the business corollary to that slide, which is saying, here's how we're going to do this from a business perspective. Here's how we're actually going to go engage the customers and market to them and convince them to take the money out of their pocket and give it to you. So that's what the go-to-market's all about. So it is in the weeds. It's down dirty in the mud. This is how you're actually going to do stuff. Oh, and by the way, apologies. I'm actually streaming from my house today. We're in the process of moving, so I already packed up my office, which is why the background's a little bit different. So hopefully we'll be in the new office at the next stream. Okay, but and as always, please put your questions into chat, and I'd much rather answer the questions as you have them rather than just waiting till the end. Okay, so cool. So we're going to talk about 4 different strategies here. So let me just show you what we're going to be looking at here. So here's what we're going to be looking at. We've got 4 different strategies that I think should address 99% of you guys. So I'm assuming that you're all small businesses, you're all kind of in that venture early stage space. There are basically 4 strategies that we're going to talk about here. The first strategy, number 1, is just responding to solicitations. So this is, hopefully you're all familiar with this. This is when the government puts something out on sam.gov or SBIR.gov. They say, hey, we want to buy X, and you can go write a proposal. Say, hey, I would like to sell you something that delivers on X. Cool. Strategy number 2 is proactive outreach. And basically the idea here is that instead of waiting for the government to say, hey, we need blank, you're going to go build relationships with government types who could actually, say, ooh, I didn't realize I needed what you're selling. I'm going to create a new solicitation that I hadn't really planned for, but that's going to address what you provide. Option number 3 is similar to that, but it's subcontracting. So it's the same basic idea of reaching out to people, building relationships, getting that outreach to people who are interested. But instead of doing it to the government directly, you're going to do it to prime contractors that are already in the space, that already have a contract, that already have relationships. And basically, you want to piggyback off of what they have in place so that you can get on contract faster. And then number 4 is R&D to sales. And frankly, this is a very popular strategy for companies kind of, I think, at your size, just because it's great to be able to start off by getting some funding for your product and then pivot from the funding oriented relationship to the government into a sales oriented relationship to the government. So those are our 4 strategies that we're going to talk about. And as you have questions about any of these strategies, please just ask me. Let's figure these things out. Okay. So strategy number 1 is this first one of just responding to solicitations. All right. So let me get back to the other screen here. Cool. So responding to solicitations. So let's talk about the pros here. The pro of responding to solicitations is that it's potentially huge money. Like, if you've heard that the federal government spends, billions and billions of dollars on products and services, 90% of it is going to come out through these channels. So theoretically, this is the channel, this is the go-to-market strategy that is going to potentially result in you getting huge, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from the government. But there are some cons. Frankly, the biggest con for I think most of the companies, for most of y'all that are listening to this, is you probably don't have a complete product that's ready to sell at scale. It's pretty rare that the government wants to buy one of something or even 10 of something. Generally, when the government buys something, they want to buy hundreds of something, and they want it to be tested and mature and validated and like totally buttoned up. So if you're here talking about venture and pitch decks, you might not have a complete product, or at least not a product that is so validated that you would qualify for these. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that a lot of these government contracts through this channel are going to have a lot of compliance requirements baked into them. So it's going to be like weirdo government accounting standards, or maybe some security clearances, or maybe all of it has to be compliant, made in the USA type stuff. You may or may not meet those requirements. That's going to be a problem too. Third problem with this strategy is that the competition tends to be quite fierce. Because this is a solicitation, it's published on SAM, some other resource. Typically, I've run the numbers. On average, solicitations have 6 bids per winner. So, at just the basic math tells us that, with 6 total bidders, you have about a 15% chance of winning. Now, happy to talk more about what those real win rates are and whether that 15% is a real number, or if there are better ways to look at it. But bottom line, they could be, the chances of winning can be quite low. And then the last problem that this strategy has is it's not really available if you sell a component. Because check it out. The government, sorry, I think I've got I've got a slide in here somewhere about this. Sorry, I'll get to it in just a minute. So basically, the reason I bring this up is that, the government doesn't want to buy the chips and the circuit board and the CPUs and the power supply. They want to buy a computer as a unit. And so the reason, so as a result, the government typically works through systems integrators. So if you sell a component, so a thing that goes in a thing, the chances that there's going to be a solicitation for a component are actually pretty low. So for all of those reasons, this can be a fairly challenging go-to-market strategy for early stage companies. But if you meet all of those requirements, and maybe you have a really robust commercial product, and you're just ready to take that commercial product, start selling it to government, and you are ready for this strategy, let's talk a little bit just about what this could look like on your slide. So what I would encourage you to do is just say, hey, what's your first go-to-market strategy? Well, there it is. We're going to compete for government contracts. Then what should you put underneath that? First thing, I encourage you to just say how you're going to find them. Because frankly, as a small business owner, you are busy. You've got a lot going on. You can't be going to sam.gov, other resources every day looking for stuff. So demonstrate that you've created a search in some sort of alerting platform. Second one, give a sense for the value and some examples. Now, presumably, if you're using this strategy, you should also have built a federal market slide, which we talked about in the last stream. So if you didn't see that stream, it's up on YouTube. You can go watch the last stream. We walk through a really step-by-step process for you to size the federal market for your product. But I encourage you to at least to mention that here. So at least say, total market size is going to be, X millions of dollars. And, probably just because, real estate on slides is really limited, I might recommend that you not list the examples of the different contracts. But on our on our market sizing slide, we did list a bunch of examples of the kinds of contracts that are coming out. So I encourage you to say, hey, go look at our market sizing slide for examples. And then the last thing that you want to do, I think, on this go-to-market slide is call out some of the IDIQs and other large contract vehicles that you expect the government to use to buy your stuff. And this is important Not so much because it's a near-term go-to-market strategy. It's more important that you demonstrate to the investor that you understand this part of it and that you're working toward it. Because the reality is that if you want to sell, if you want to make these, multi-bazillion dollar contracts with the federal government, you're going to have to get on these IDIQs and other vehicles to actually capture that. So you want to articulate that, yes, we are aware of the vehicles that the government's using to buy these products, and we have a plan to go pursue it. So, it's like, this is the name of it, this is the name of the vehicle, this is when it's expected to rebid, be open, when you might have a chance to get on that vehicle, and give a little bit of a sense for the size of that. So I'm just going to check the chat real quick just to see if there are any questions. I just don't want to spend too much time. Yep, okay, I don't see any questions right now. But please, by all means, if any of this stuff doesn't make sense, just please ask so I can stop and we can go spend some time talking about what exactly it is you actually need to do to create this slide for yourself. Cool. Okay. So great. So that's strategy number one. All right. So I'm just checking my notes here, make sure there's okay. All right. So that's strategy number one. Let's go into strategy number two. All right. So strategy number two. Sorry, it's really weird. It's like not letting me do this. Okay, so strategy number two is this proactive outreach. So the proactive outreach is this idea that you're going to go identify who the government officers are that care about what it is you do, about your product, and you're going to build a relationship with them. And you're going to say, hey, government, I do this. I know that there's no open solicitation for it right now, but let me tell you all about my product so that you can then give me some feedback. I can tweak it over the next couple months. And then when the time's right, when you feel comfortable, maybe you just buy it from us directly. Or you release a solicitation to buy that thing publicly, but you've put your finger on this, you've put your thumb on the scale, and the way that they've written the requirements align so closely to what it is that you do that you have a much higher chance of winning. And like, this is a really powerful strategy. It's basically, if you want to know, like, how is it that Lockheed Martin, Booz Allen, and all these other like mega primes are making tons of money? It's because they invest tons of time. They invest thousands of dollars worth of time into engaging customers and shaping those requirements and spending time understanding what they care about, so that 5 years later they have a very well tailored, they have a solicitation or a opportunity to sell that they're extremely well positioned to win. Okay, and so like when you hear about a government contracting sales pipeline, largely this is what they're talking about. It's the way that you're engaging early and engaging the government early, so that the fruits of your labor start paying off, and then after you've been doing this for a few years, you have this like continuous flow of contracts that you're very well positioned to win. Okay. All right. And then, so that's the good things about this proactive outreach strategy. The cons of this proactive outreach strategy are that it takes a lot of time. Like the reality, as you're probably picking up, you're having to do lots of this outreach. You're having to go spend a lot of time with the government before you start seeing the fruits of your labor. And as a startup, obviously that can be difficult for you, right? Because you're living hand to mouth. You need to pay your developers. You need to pay yourself. And so you can't necessarily invest that long time before you get a payday. But, all right. So let's talk about how you do this. So, and by the way, okay, so this is what we're trying to get to. So like this would be an example maybe of what a proactive outreach go-to-market strategy might look like on a slide. So it's 2 or 3 people who are representative of the people, of the government officers that you want to go engage. Who are they? What is their relationship? So like in our market sizing webinar or live stream, we talked about training. So in this case, I just kept that going. And so we'd be able to see, it's like here, we found a bunch of people inside of government. They are leaders in the training space that you would want to go talk to because you want to go sell them, or at least engage them and start shaping your engagement with them around their thinking about your training products. Okay, great. So this is where we want to end up. Let's talk for just a second about how you do that. So let me switch over here. So cool. So I hope this looks familiar to everybody. So this is the market sizing analysis that we did in the last webinar. So as you recall, we downloaded all the data about training purchases that the government's made, and then we came over here and we organized it to see how much was the government spending each year on training stuff, and then we actually we down selected a little bit. It said like to try to narrow down on the types of contracts that we as new businesses might have a better chance of winning, right? So if we want to find the government agencies who are the ones who are maybe the most likely to buy, who are the agencies that we should target, here's what you do. So in your pivot table window, here's what I want you to do. You say funding agency name, drop that into rows. Okay, now these are all the people that you should recognize. It's all the government agencies out there, and it organizes it based on how much each of those agencies spent per year. And we can come over here, we can sort largest to smallest. Great. And we can see that Department of Defense spent the most on training, second was the VA, on down the line. Cool. But obviously the DoD is a mega organization that employs hundreds of thousands of people, so we need to narrow down a little bit to help us find the people that we want to go talk to. So next thing, find funding sub-agency name, put that in, and now we can see, okay, great. This just broke down each of the agencies based on which of their sub-agencies is doing the spending. So in this case, we can see that within the DoD, the Navy is the biggest spender, second biggest is the Air Force, Army, on down the line, and it also breaks out all the other agencies. But as you're probably aware, the Navy is still a huge freaking place. So the third level of detail that we can get on who is actually spending this money is going to be the office. And the good news about the office is that it is actually fairly detailed. Now we're all the way down to, so we're saying the biggest office within the Navy, within the Department of Defense, is the Naval Surface Warfare Center. Second biggest organization is Fleet Support Center. And we can see, okay, so if we're looking to target federal agencies, parts of the parts of the federal agencies that are spending the most on what you do, which would in turn say, I want to go talk to the people inside of those organizations, you'd say, okay, well, my top couple targets should be, Naval Surface Warfare Center, Fleet Support Center, Naval, I think this is, and I believe NAWC is Naval Air Warfare Center, I believe, Training Systems Division, Naval Information Warfare Systems. So what I would do then is I would take these, I go to LinkedIn, drop them in there, maybe with like a keyword like training, and you're going to start finding people. You're going to find people who are associated with, Naval Surface Warfare Center and training, and then I'd start reaching out to those people, or try to find like friends of friends to make an introduction, so that you can go find who it is that to be able to get that warm introduction, so that you can go have a conversation. So that's the process that I go through when I'm trying to identify the people at the largest spenders in my space. That way I can go try to find them, make the relationship, build trust, get the meeting, show them my capabilities, and hopefully over time that becomes a sale. Okay? But again, I'm going to check chat real quick because I know that's a lot. So still no questions, which concerns me only because I know that's a lot of information. But if anybody has any questions about like, hey, how do I actually do this? It looks good on Excel, but like, what does this look like in practice? Just want to make sure that people understand and they can do it themselves at home. In the next couple of days, whenever you're doing this for yourself. So I actually just want to pause for just a second and make sure that people are tracking what's going on here. And if people get it, awesome. If not, also not a problem. Okay, cool. All right, so if there are no questions, I'm just going to keep going then. All right, cool. So there's our go-to-market. So that gives us this top piece of like, who are the people and some validation that they are in our space. Great. And then I encourage you, as part of your go-to-market slide, to say, what is it that you are going to actually do to engage these people? Because, it's one thing to have a single conversation with each of these people. It's something very different to build a relationship and influence them in a way that actually leads you to understand, like, hey, that leads them to say, wow, I'm so interested in what this company is doing that I'm going to go buy from them. So, perfect. So, again, building relationships is tough. It is easier said than done. I am very aware of that. So if you have thoughts, if any questions here, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. All right, cool. Sorry, there's my notes. Oh, yeah, sorry, should have, and I just realized as I was getting ready for this live stream, that I should probably talk a little bit about which of these 4 go-to-market strategies you might want to consider. So here's my 2 cents, and of course, every company's different. You need to make the right decisions for your own business. But here's my recommendation. If you're pre-seed, if you're pre-seed, I'm going to assume you pretty much don't have a product yet. So if you're pre-seed, generally speaking, I think that subcontracting, so this yellow icon, and then the purple, the R&D to sales pivot strategy are probably your best bet. If you're seed, so like at a seed stage, I sort of assume that you've got a prototype and maybe you have some light traction with commercial customers. Then if you're commercial first, don't stop. Just keep your eye on the commercial prize. Like I talk about this a lot. Commercial is, I think, the easier path to getting to revenue and to becoming a successful business. So that's probably where you want to leave it. But if you are government first, so if the federal government is you're one of your first customers, this is probably about the time when you'd want to start building out your subcontracting strategy. Okay? And then if you're Series A and you're commercial first, this might be a good time to start introducing your like actual direct contracting strategy, so responding to RFPs and whatnot. And then, also if you're Gov first, this would be the time when you'd want to, going after contracts also. And if you're Series B plus, transparently, once you're Series B, the value of an SBIR or other relatively small R&D grant and like trying to pivot your way into sales through that might be a little bit lower, just because the dollar once you're a Series B company, I'm going to assume that you've got tens of millions of dollars in revenue, you've got a lot going on. Is an SBIR really going to move the needle for you? Maybe, maybe not. So that strategy fades away a little bit, so that you have the time to go to really double down on your subcontracting strategy, your direct contract pursuit strategy, things like that. So very roughly, this is sort of what I would expect most companies to put as their go-to-market strategies based on how mature they are. Cool. Sorry, this is going back to that earlier point around components. So here's my point here, is that if you're selling components, so you're selling like, the wings or the engine or the fuselage or whatever, you're selling a piece of a jet, you probably aren't going to be able to sell that directly to the government. So your ability to do the direct sales strategy, like pursuing RFPs, probably not going to happen. So instead, if you're selling a complete solution, so you're selling the plane, you're selling the full software tool, you're selling the full item that the government would buy as a single unit, then that government, that solicitation model is actually a really good strategy. Cool. And so here, let's talk a little about some of the pros and cons of subcontracting. So subcontracting, basically the idea here is that instead of trying to develop a relationship with the government and then you use that relationship with the government to influence their buying, you're kind of doing the same idea, except you're doing that engagement with a prime contractor. So like, in this model here, if you create the engines, well, the government probably isn't going to buy an engine by itself. So you want to go find whoever the prime contractor is, your Boeings, your Lockheeds, whoever it is, that build the full plane, and you're going to try to sell the engine to them. Okay? And the great thing about subcontracting is, and by the way, I'm talking about this as like big items, like, an engine. But, if you sell a really small component, like you might sell a chip, or you might sell, a better ejection seat for the plane, whatever it is, the best path for you is probably going to be to try to sell that, new and improved chip or ejection seat or whatever it is to the company that's building the full system. And the big pros here, and the pros are significant. Like, number one, it can save so much time and effort because the prime has the contract vehicles in place. They know the government customers. They know how to write proposals. They have all the compliance infrastructure in place. They've got everything that is needed to make the sale. And by subcontracting to them, you're piggybacking off of all of that work they've already done. So that's great. The con of this is that, frankly, working with primes is slow. They are also big institutions with thousands of people by and large, and they have a lot of, credibility tied up, and they already have a ecosystem of subcontractors that are providing the products that go into their tools and their end products already. So you're going to have to displace a prime, convince a prime that they should, spend money on you rather than spending money on somebody else. And so that can take quite a while to build that relationship. And then the second thing to be concerned about when you're working with a prime as a sub to a prime is protecting your IP. Like, the reality is that you're going to send them your thing. You're going to send them your chip, your code, your whatever it is to integrate into their larger system. And you just want to make sure that you've protected your IP before you do. Okay? I genuinely believe that the concerns over IP theft are overblown, but you want to protect yourself before you do anything here. Okay? Cool. All right. And then, so similarly, this might be, so a subcontracting part of your go-to-market slide would look very similar to the proactive engagement. It's who are the people at the primes that are in charge of your programs. So as we can see, it's like, okay, here are the people at that prime, and the way that we get that information, or at least help us get toward that information, is by coming here. We say recipient, and then we take recipient name here, and we drag it into the rows field. Sorry, missed it there. Rows field, and we can see, okay, so who are the companies that are already providing, in this case, where our hypothetical is training support, who are the people that are already providing training support services and products to, in this case, we said the Naval Surface Warfare Center. Okay, so it's whoever this is, American Systems, Frontier Technology, Georgia Tech, HII, Mission Technologies, these people. So same idea, take the names of the companies, put them into LinkedIn, see who's out there, and see if you have any connections to the people at those companies so that you can start making inroads, start identifying key decision makers, getting that relationship, getting a chance to demo and talk to them about what you do. Okay? So that's your subcontracting go-to-market strategy in a nutshell. Okay. Same thing. I'm going to just want to check the chat, make sure that, see if there are any questions. Okay, cool. Looks like people have generally got it. So now let's go over here and look at the next strategy. The fourth go-to-market strategy is doing the government R&D to sales pivot. And I just have to say this because I say this all the time, and I think it's really important. Government R&D is not revenue. You do not put government SBIR, government BAA, CSs, any OTAs, any of that stuff that is R&D centric is not revenue. Do not report as revenue in your financial or your traction portions of your slide. This is a funding strategy, not a go-to-market strategy. Okay? The reason it's on this slide is because the things that you're doing to do the government R&D can lend themselves to making the sales pivot. So this is an enabler. This is more of like an enabling strategy that enables one of the other three, not a strategy by itself. Yeah, see here you go. It's like doing the government R&D enables the other three strategies. It's kind of not a strategy by itself. Okay, so but there's some big pros to this strategy. Number one, you're getting funded. So like literally the government is giving you money along the way to build your product if you do it right. That's awesome. Number two, and honestly, somewhat more importantly, when you're doing the R&D, you're meeting the government officers who know about and who care about your thing, your type of your product, your technology. So you're getting to build relationships with the govies that you would then want to go try to sell to, potentially. And this is more of a SBIR thing, but it's SBIR is a huge part of this ecosystem, so a lot of you probably are thinking about it, is that winning a SBIR does help you with your future contracting. Transparently, I do think this benefit is a little overblown. If you're interested in it, I've got a bunch of YouTube videos up that talk about just the limits to this strategy as far as it helping your sales, but it is there. It is a benefit. It is real. The cons of the government R&D strategy is that transparently it can be slow and time consuming, because you're talking about a SBIR proposal, you're talking about BAA proposal. Good planning figure that I plan for is that it's going to take you 100 hours to do the proposal, and then it can take you 6 months to get the SBIR award, and then you're going to do the SBIR for 6 to 12 months, or the BAA for 6 to 12 months, and then it's a 6 to 12 month gap between your phase 1 and your phase 2. So bottom line, you're really extending out your runway. You're really extending out the time until you get to a sale, but it can be a really good thing to do in kind of parallel. So like while you're funding your company with government R&D and building the relationships with the R&D people and getting the R&D people inside of government to introduce you to the people inside of government who are the buyers for your tech and the prime contractors for your tech, well, that's going to be a great way to fund your business along the way and set yourself up for success when you start pivoting into the other three strategies. Okay? And something like this might be how this could appear as a go-to-market slide. So it's your strategy here is government funded R&D, and then give it a little bit of detail here. It's like there are how many relevant funding opportunities, and this is giving the reader, the investor, a little bit of an understanding of like, hey, does this company have one chance a year roughly to win a R&D contract that could grow into something, or are there 50 opportunities a year? What are their chances? And then you can give a couple examples. It's like, hey, there was in 2024 there was an SBIR for blankety blank trading tech that we could have had we been trying to pursue these things a year ago, we would have had a good chance of winning. So really paint the picture a little bit of what it is you're going to be pursuing, what your chances are of success. And then in the last bullet under this go-to-market strategy, I would give some indication of how you're going to pivot from doing R&D for the government to selling the products of your R&D to the government. So whatever that strategy is, it's like, hey, our plan is to pivot from funded R&D and use that to enhance and turbocharge our subcontracting strategy. Great. So those are I would call those the 4 core go-to-market strategies that I think I've seen be most successful for companies, dual use and fed tech companies. Couple pointers on this slide. Number one pointer: don't treat the go-to-market slide as an independent thing, like that's living by itself. Use the market sizing slide, your go-to-market slide, and potentially your traction slide to tell a unified story. So generally, I encourage people to have all 3 of these slides, like 1, 2, 3, and then because that way you can say, it's like, hey, look, this is the size of my market, it's huge, and here's a bunch of example contracts. Next slide is my go-to-market slide, where it's going to tell you, where it's going to explain, hey, I'm going to try to pursue these contracts through a combination of subcontracting and federal R&D that is going to give me access to the decision makers that are involved in those contracts. So by treating these three as sort of all related slides, you can you can save a lot of space and make it a much clearer story. Number two, please be specific. Like, it's very hard for me as somebody who reads a lot of decks to understand exactly what it is that you're planning to do if you're talking in generalities. If you're just saying like, hey, generally we're going to win government R&D and that's going to set us up for sales. I was like, well, okay, maybe that's true, but it doesn't give me a lot of confidence that you know exactly how to do those, actually how to operationalize those things. Okay. And then number three, and this is really important, is that especially if you're dual use, especially if you are both commercial and federally focused, explain the distribution of work between commercial and federal. Like, honestly, in my experience, you're much better off going commercial first and then going to government. So just make sure that if that is the case, you articulate that. You make sure that the investors know, hey, you have only so many hours in the day and you probably have a very limited BD team. How are you going to divide their effort between these strategies and your commercial strategies? Okay. Next thing. Here's some things that I suggest you don't do on this go-to-market slide. Number one, don't try to apply business to consumer strategies when you're doing B2G, business to government sales. And that's just because, like, if you read any go-to-market literature around, commercial sales, you're going to see a lot of things like, oh, I'm going to do inbound marketing and I'm going to do this cold email campaign and I'm going to, go to trade shows and conferences. Like, there's a bunch of strategies you can do when there are thousands of potential customers that you need to engage separately. But in the government space, government acquisitions are very process driven. And I find that in general, business consumer strategies that work well on the commercial side typically don't work especially well here. That's number one. Number two, I've said this a few times, but I see it so often that I need to say it again. Don't treat SBIR and R&D as a go-to-market strategy by themselves. I see this all the time. It frankly just undermines the credibility of the person presenting the deck. So R&D is an enabler of other go-to-market strategies. It's not really a go-to-market strategy by itself. And then number three, don't rely on retired general officers to make your go-to-market strategy happen. Like, I meet people all the time who say, oh yeah, I've got General so-and-so on my board. They're going to get us into all of these acquisitions programs. That works great if you're Lockheed Martin and you're trying to do billion-dollar sales of, like, stealth fighters and whatnot. Yeah, cool. That's a good strategy. If you're a new company and you're just trying to sell, like, your first 1,000 units or, a couple $100,000 worth of product, in my experience, general officers don't take the time to actually do the work, and often they don't know the people at such, frankly, at the low levels that you need to engage with to be successful. So, if you have a senior officer on your board, that's great. Treat them as an enabler, not as a replacement for having a really solid go-to-market strategy. Okay, so those are sort of my points. Now I just want to go over a couple go-to-market slides that I've gotten recently, and I want to say thank you to all of these companies who agreed to letting me publish or be able to share these slides out of their deck. And just this is everything I'm saying is in the spectrum of constructive, like pointing out what good looks like and where even better could look like. So here's one slide. And so the go-to-market here is leveraging this highly. SBIR Phase 3 is to IDIQs to programs of record. So here's what I love about this slide is that is actually a very good sequence. It's SBIR Phase 3 is a non-competed contract that they qualify for. Awesome. Phase 2 is IDIQs, these big, beefy master services agreements that are frankly like great channels into larger sales where the competition's lower and you get to have more access to the customer. I love that. And then phase three of this is programs of record. Basically, this is just, without getting into all the nitty gritty, these are basically just earmarked funds for that company. They lay out their customers, Cyber 9 program. They've listed like the actual, so they've listed the customer and the specific programs that they want to talk about, or excuse me, not talk about, that they want to go pursue. I actually like this a lot. Gotcha. So like, and this is great. Like, I actually like this slide a lot. It's got detail, it's actionable, like it demonstrates that they know their customer, they know how their customer buys. They've given me enough detail where I can go check their work. Like I can go actually see, it's like, hey, is the Cyber 9 program, like, do they have traction there? Is that contract recompeting? How big is it? So, I mean, I think this is a really solid slide. This company's a little bit more advanced, so they don't necessarily need to talk about the individual people they're going to go engage because they're a little bit, they can demonstrate a track record of sales, but it still gives me the information I need to trust that this company has a plan for how they're going to go to market. So to me, 2 thumbs up on this slide. I like it. Cool. And then this is sort of, they sort of split their go-to-market into like with a little bit of a growth slide. So like I would say that this slide is a little bit of like this is almost like post go-to-market. This is about their expansion plan, but it has a lot of go-to-market elements baked into it, where it's saying like, hey, this is our expected user growth. This is a little bit of our history, so it's got a little bit of the traction elements baked into it. Which, you know, if you want to make a traction slide a separate slide, you want to make it part of this slide, I don't really care. It's giving me the information that I need, which is that, hey, this isn't just hypothetical. This company has actually made sales. It's actually delivered stuff. It's actually, you know, it's released a product. It's got stuff going. It's scaling. It's doing things. So, same idea. It's like, hey, this is how I'm going to grow. This is how I'm going to go to market. I like it. Okay, another go to market slide. Okay. See, this basically is saying that they've got some. So it's, again, they're sort of mixing their traction slide in with their go-to-market slide. So which I have no problem with. I think that, you know, these are 2 pieces of the story, and whether you break that into 2 slides, 3 slides, 1 slide, don't really care as long as you're telling the story well. And this one is basically telling us, you know, this is the benefits that they discovered, and that they had some cost benefits, they had some scaling benefits. They break down a little bit around their price. I think to me, the even better on this slide would be to be a little bit more specific on who the customers are. Say, hey, this is my specific customer that I'm going to go target. You know, these are the people at that customer I'm going to go target. These are the companies that are already in place that I could partner with to get in there. So, like, just giving me that little bit of detail that helps me connect this big market opportunity and all these benefits that this company is generating, which is awesome. Just show me give me a little bit more on the connective tissue that's going to get you from today to that future state. I think would be, you know, that's the even better if here. But again, I think it's, you know, it's got a lot to like. It gets me excited that they're really generating value. And then this is, you know, talking a little bit about the go-to-market from the perspective of like, where the price is, where it should be. You know, this is making the case for why it's really exciting. Again, you know, it's talking a little bit about, you know, the DOE looks like they're a customer. So same basic idea. I just wish they gave a little bit more on who the customers are, who within the customers they're going to target. But it is giving me a little bit of a path. Conceptually, it's laying out a path. So that's nice. Slide 3. So on this one, yeah, so this one is a little bit, I think that this, you know, again, there's a lot that I like here. It's got a little bit of the traction built in. It's like, hey, how many sales have they had? What are the use cases where people are using their product? What does the future look like? It's, you know, extending health spans. Love all of that. It's giving me that future. It's giving me the current. On this one, it's similar to my last thought is, I just wish there was a little bit more on like the mechanics of how they were going to get from A to B. So like they've got some great, you know, they've got the logos, National Science Foundation, the SBIR program, LEAP, all, you know, these are all gold star, you know, blue chip organizations to be partnered with, it would just be nice if you could say, hey, these are the specific contracts, these are the specific strategies to meet the people, to meet the companies, to meet the whoever's that will allow me to capture that market. Um, so yeah, so I know I know I went pretty fast through those, um, but I'm afraid I do have a hard stop in 10 minutes. So let me go ahead. Those are my thoughts on go to market. I'm going to check this chat real quick, see what people have. Looks like nobody's got anything in chat. So you know what? I'm just going to hang out for a minute. If anybody has any questions, please drop them into chat. Happy to talk about what's going on. If anybody has any questions about, hey, what are the, or any thoughts about the slides, the presentation, please let me know. I'm always trying to make these better. And if you've got some value out of this, really helpful if you like this video. And yeah, look forward to seeing you in the next one. So yeah, like I said, I'll hang out for a minute, and yeah, feel free to drop any questions you have, and if not, thanks for coming. I know there's a little bit of a lag, so yeah, happy to. I'm just going to give it a second. Got a question here from John. What would be your advice for a systems engineering startup with defense industrial experience as individuals but no past performance as a company? We're primarily, we're primarily systems integrators. Yeah, great question. I mean, if you're primarily systems integrators, I guess my question would be what it is that you're doing that's venture oriented. I mean, is the idea that you're going to be a systems integrator of a specific product that you want to go like take to market? And I, so if you're principally interested in being a systems integrator, I've never seen a systems integrator that was just purely like program management style integrating capabilities. Um, yeah, transparently, I'm not sure I've ever seen that as a venture backable company. Um, that being said, if you're not interested in venture backing, you're just right here. You're here in order to like speak to how to go to market as a systems integrator. I think the my thought would be, yeah, sorry, we want to develop autonomous attritable assets, but we need funding to get there. Yeah, so I mean, in that case, what I think you'd want to do is to lay out, well, what is your go-to-market strategy? So, like, who is the customer for attritable drones? Great. And then whoever those customers are, who are the people within each of those customers? So, like, within the Army, within the Navy, within the Air Force, whoever it is that you think your customer is going to be, identify that person and then engage them. And then how are you going to meet them? How are you going to build a relationship with them? Who are the current companies that are building attritable drones, or or platforms that your attritable drones would replace? Um, so for example, maybe like let's just say Raytheon, for example. I don't know this, but like imagining that Raytheon was one of your potential prime contractors. Who are the people at Raytheon that you're going to have a best chance of like engaging with? Who you're going to be able to talk to? Who you're going to be able to meet? How you're going to convince them to use your attritable drones instead of whatever it is they're doing today? So, yeah, I mean, like funding that, all the usual suspects, BAAs, SBIRs, other federal funding. Um, and then as far as the go-to-market strategy, I think I would focus mostly on how you do that, about who is it that is going to potentially be a customer, whether they're prime contractors or they're or the government buyers, and you're going to build a relationship with them. Cool. Any other Any other questions? Yeah, John, you're very welcome. Cool. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm afraid I need to drop. I'll probably be turning this into a class here in the next couple weeks once I get my studio back. But yeah, have a great day and thanks for joining. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.